Welcome back to Filmbox, everybody. I'm your host, Tyler Edwards, and today I'm going to be talking about Loki episode 2, episode 2 of Loki. So this will be an in-depth review of the show, or specifically the second episode of the show. So without further ado, I think I have one more kind of announcement before we get into the review, but here we go. We're diving into Loki episode 2. Sorry, hi, editing Tyler here. Something that I've noticed with MCU shows, especially starting with WandaVision with theories, the theory of WandaVision being, is Mephisto involved? And of course, we found out that it's not. Some people speculated that it was Evan Peters, who ended up being Ralph Bohner, which a lot of people were mad about. I thought was very disappointing, but I wasn't very angry, though I did have my best friend that I watched the show with was very upset with that reveal. And then in Falcon and Winter Soldier, I don't think there was much of a theory behind things. I think Falcon and Winter Soldier, out of the 3 shows we've seen thus far, is probably, in my opinion, the one that has been the most disappointing overall show. But that's just a personal opinion. But right now, Loki. I know a lot of people are theorizing with Loki. Some theories are suggesting, is Mobius a Loki, or are TVA agents clones of Morbius or Mobius. I get it confused with saying Morbius and Mobius, and I just want to say that I know it's Mobius. If I say Morbius, I don't mean to, or if it's just better for me to say Owen Wilson, I'll just say Owen Wilson. But Mobius, I will try to remember that. But I just want to address that. I do think that it's fun to theorize, but I do think that we, as the audience, for the MCU, Star Wars, what have you, we don't need to let our minds and our imaginations of theorizing overtake of what they give us and what they intended. Because if we think, well, we're going to get Mephisto, and then we watch the whole show and there's no Mephisto, we get angry because there was no Mephisto. Does that make sense? I think that as fans, especially since the MCU hasn't released a movie and we've just gotten these shows, I feel like we're just getting kind of like angry over. We're getting angry because our theories aren't true, and I think that's something that we need to stop, because it's fun to theorize, but I think that we're all kind of teetering on the edge of where, it was fun, but now it's just like people are yelling at each other, well, your theory's wrong, well, your theory's wrong. And yet, when Marvel gives us what they're actually giving us, we've read so much into what they're giving us that we think that there's something more there when there's not. Again, it's fun to theorize, but I think we need to kind of take a step back and not blow things out of, let's not blow things out of, sorry, that was a really bad Heath Ledger Joker impression I wanted to do. Anyways, I think that we shouldn't over-theorize things, and we should just kind of let the events unfold, So for me, as much as it's fun to theorize, I'm kind of getting tired of hearing different theories. And for me personally, I just want to continue watching Loki. If I have a theory, I'll keep it to myself, or I might tell a couple of people. But for the most part, for my theories, I don't have many, and I'm not going to share them on here. I just want, to watch the show, and I want to enjoy what they wanted to give me, not what I wanted them to give me. So with that in mind, let's get into talking about Loki. Okay, so this episode starts off with Loki sitting at a desk, no longer wearing his kind of prisoner jumpsuit, but more or less kind of something similar to what Mobius wears. He's wearing a nice old-fashioned dress shirt with a thin tie and slacks. He looks really good. I really enjoy the costumes in this episode. He's kind of laying back, reading a magazine about jet skis, which I'll get into in a minute. But he's going through training with Miss Minutes, who in this episode kind of shows up and pops out of the computer as this little animation, and that's kind of live animation, more like a hologram. She's like a hologram. And she's like, well, Loki, you need to take this seriously. And he starts swatting at her with the magazine. I thought it was pretty funny. And then she goes back into the computer. It's a very funny scene. The next scene we see is a TVA task force. Probably, I don't know what they're called. I'm just going to call them this task force. They go to a Ren fair in Wisconsin in the year 1985, and they are quickly dispatched by the variant Loki, not our variant Loki from 2012, which the whole show is about, but this variant Loki that we were introduced at the end of the last episode that was kind of covered in a hood and a cloak and all that jazz. So after that, we get back, and Mobius is talking to Renslayer, the judge, who was over Loki's trial in the previous episode. Her and a lot of the other TVA agents don't really care for Loki. They don't like that this variant is working with him on this case, because they see him less as an asset, more of a liability, and they think that they should just reset him. Mobius does his best to argue for Loki. And then after that, we just get kind of more things of him and Loki trying to solve this mystery. And that's when Loki realizes that this variant is hiding out in apocalyptic points in the timeline, because if everybody around you is going to die, nothing happens, I guess. That's how it's described in the show. But what made him realize this was he was looking at papers. He was looking at the report for Ragnarok, which, again, this Loki has not experienced Ragnarok. So for him to see how many Asgardians perished, because I don't think at this point he knows that Thor lives, ? Like, he doesn't know if Thor lived, or if all the Asgardians died, or he doesn't know if some of them have lived and there's Asgardians on Earth. He does not know that, I don't think. So to see him kind of see Ragnarok and the fact that it took place, very heartbreaking a little bit. But anyways, that makes him realize this. And then Mobius has this good line where he says, "I'm not going to take you a stroll on the promenade, let alone take you to an apocalyptic event." But eventually he begrudgingly takes Loki to Pompeii, where Loki was like, well, I mean, he don't do anything to draw attention. What does Loki do? He draws attention to himself. That he's a drama queen. That, like what Tony Stark. Sorry, my chair squeaks. It's old. Loki makes some noise, does all that, and then eventually the volcano erupts. Nothing happens, so the theory checks out, and then Mobius and Loki dip before anything happens, and they're consumed by molten lava, of course. Anyways, after this, they get back to reassemble a task force to find the Loki variant, which they found in the year 2050 at a rocks cart, or at least that's where they think they will find this variant, is at a rocks cart, which is a reference to the Roxxon Corporation from the comics, which hasn't been referenced a whole lot in the MCU. I think it was referenced in the show Cloak and Dagger, but in the MCU, I don't know if that's strictly MCU, but strictly MCU through the movies and whatnot. Iron Man 3 was the last time I believe we've referenced Roxxon. Anyways, but before they go to the rocks cart, Mobius gives Loki his knives, or his daggers, and then one of the TVA agents, I can't remember her name or the character's name, but she literally grabs him and goes, no, and then, which is kind of funny, and then they all go on to the mission. When they arrive, it's like a hurricane's coming, and it's raining and all that, and a little touch that I really liked was that Loki looks up at the sky, because it's coming down, thunder and rain and all that. Loki looks to the sky like, kind of like, is that Thor? And I think because, Thor's the god of thunder, thunder, lightning, rain. He thinks maybe, he's like, is that Thor? And I thought it was kind of a cute little moment that, Loki's looking up, not because it's raining, but because maybe it's his brother. After that, they go up and they split up, search for clues, like good old Scooby-Doo, and hijinks ensue. Mobius and all of them, they don't find anything, but Loki and the TVA agent who confiscated his knives, they find somebody who has been bewitched or possessed by this variant Loki, And then the variant Loki then possesses the TVA agent and leads our Loki, somewhere. And the conversation that the Lokis have with each other is very kind of like, well, I'm the more important one. Well, no, I'm the more important one. Well, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? It's kind of like that kind of stuff where it's like, who's the clone? It's kind of like the Mauler twins from Invincible. Well, who's the clone? Like, I'm the clone. Like, I'm the original. You're the clone, and all that stuff. So, after all that, the variant then, after using an assortment of different people, the variant comes out of hiding, takes off the cloak, and is revealed to be none other than Lady Loki, which I was very excited for, and I knew she was going to be a big part of the show. So I was excited. I'm excited to see her and Tom Hiddleston go forward. I think that her reveal was really good. It was very clever. Of course, she then drops all the little time bombs that the TVA uses to reset a timeline. That she drops all of those into the timeline. She set like multiples of those. She sets them all off and they go into little portals throughout the timeline. And then she opens a timeline portal for herself. She walks through. Loki is thinking about walking through. And then the TVA, Mobius and some TVA agents, they go, Loki, no. And then Loki kind of looks back like, and then he goes to the portal closes, and Mobius goes, damn it. Then it cuts back to the TVA, and they're like, oh no. They're like, oh, what do we do? They're scrambling, and then we see the timeline, and we see branching from the timeline, so that's going to be very fun. Can't wait to see that become the B plot. I assume that Loki and Lady Loki, that's the A plot, but the B plot will be the TVA going, well, I thought we could trust Loki. Yep. So we'll see in episode 3 and beyond. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I really love the detective aspect of this show so far. Loki was a favorite of mine, but this show is really making him more of a favorite of mine in terms of being a MCU character. But yeah, I can't wait to continue this story going forward. I think Marvel has got another hit on their hands, and this kind of satisfies me as a fan until we get Black Widow. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed this episode. So yeah, thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Subscribe. Press that button down below. Be subscribed. Hit that notification bell. Like the video. And as always, remember to treat people with kindness.